Good day, grade 8. I am your teacher, Marie.
Good day, grade 8. Now we're going to discuss a new topic. Let us enjoy watching while learning.
Our topic for today is about triangle congruence. Congruence of a triangle is studied because it is mainly application in real life world, considered to be the most stable of all geometric figures. Triangle oftentimes used as frameworks, supports on the buildings or braces for any constructions work. Architects and engineers use triangles when they build structures because triangles are strong enough to maintain their shape when act upon an internal or external forces. If two triangles are congruent, what can you conclude about corresponding side and angles? What are congruent sides and what are the congruent angles? So triangle congruence, we can visualize how the two triangles in the left side that we have may be cut and moved to the one triangles would perfectly coincide over the other. If so, then A would lie over D, and B would lie over E, and C would lie over F. In this case, we have a triangle ABC is said to be congruent to triangle DEF. Observe the order of writing the vertices must follow the indicate correspondence between vertices. So we have A correspond to D and B correspond to E. C correspond to F. So if we have in symbol, we have this A correspond to D, B correspond to E, and C correspond to F. In a given figure, we can follow the corresponding between the vertices of the two triangles. The corresponding A to B and B correspond to E and C correspond to F are called the congruence between a triangle ABC and the triangle DEF. In symbol, we have a triangle ABC congruent in the triangle DEF. Take note about the symbol of congruency or congruent. If each pair of the corresponding side is congruent and each pair of corresponding angle is congruent, there are several correct notation for congruence between triangle ABC and DEF. However, we must make sure that the notation reflects the proper correspondence between the vertices. Thus, a triangle ABC congruent to triangle DEF may be also written as triangle BAC congruent to triangle EDF, but not as triangle BAC congruent to triangle DEF. Take note that B is corresponding to D, but in the given triangle that we have in the last slide, B is correspond to E, and A correspond to D, and C correspond to F. We always take note that their corresponding side and vertices must be corresponded. Okay? Next one, we have if our triangle ABC corresponds to triangle DEF, we have the correspondence between the vertices of the two triangles formed. Then there is also correspondence between the parts of the two triangles. We have the segment AB correspond to the segment DC. We have the side. Next, we have segment BC correspond to segment EF. Another, we have the segment AC correspond to DF. And we have also the corresponding angles. So we have angle A correspond to angle D. Angle B correspond to angle E, and angle C corresponding to if their vertices can be paired so that the corresponding sides are congruent and the corresponding angles are congruent. Based on the given definition, we can say that the parts of the two triangles, we have the angles and the side are congruent. So angle A congruent to angle D, angle B congruent to angle E, angle C is congruent to angle F. That is the congruent angles. And in the given figures that we have the congruent side also. So we have the segment AB congruent to segment DE, and we have segment BC or line BC congruent to line EF, line AC congruent to line DF. From this, we can say that the congruence, from this, we can say the corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, or the CPCTC. Congruent part of a congruent triangle is usually marked to show the congruent part as follows. In many two congruent triangles, arranged of the letter are very important. So we have triangle ABS is congruent to triangle CQN. Okay? Now, we can have the very important to know. It is the three properties of the triangle's congruence. There is the follows. First is the reflexive property. Any geometric is congruent to itself. So, reflexive, it is equal to himself or to herself. Okay? So we have the triangle MUG is congruent to triangle MUG. That is the reflexive property. Another is another properties of congruence is the symmetric property. So if one figure is congruent to other, then the second figure is also congruent to the first. So if the triangle DOG is congruent to triangle CAT, then triangle CAT is congruent to triangle DOG. Okay? Another, we have the third property of congruence. We have the transitive property. So if the two figures that are congruent to the third figure, then they are also congruent to each other. So if we have the triangle ABS congruent to triangle GMA, and the triangle GMA is congruent to triangle TFC, then we can conclude a triangle ABS is congruent to triangle TFC. Okay? Next, we have an example. The two triangles in the figure are congruent. List the pair of the angles and sides that correspond to each other and name the congruent triangles. So the correspondence side and angle that we have are the following. So we have the line IR is correspond to line CS. Line IS is correspond to line CR. Then line CSR is correspond to line RS. Then we have the angle. So angle SRI congruent to angle RSC. Angle RSI congruent to angle SRC. We have the angle I correspond to angle C. Therefore, the congruent triangle is triangle ABS is congruent to triangle DFC. Another example is we have the triangle RYA congruent to triangle SHE. Name the congruent part of a triangle. The congruent part of a triangle are following. So we have the line RY is correspond to line SH. Line YA corresponds to line HE. Segment RA corresponds to segment CE. And next we have the angles. So angle YRA is correspond or congruent to angle HSE. Next we have the angle RAY congruent to angle SEH. Then we have the angle RYA is congruent to angle SHE. Now we have the condition for triangle congruence such as SSS, SAS, and ASA. So everything has its own identity, but sometimes we look for something that is common to them just to prove that they are alike. Just like other things or people, triangle also has condition that can be used to determine if the two triangles are congruent or equal. But sometimes even we having only one or two characteristics to each two person or things, we already identify that they are alike. It is the true with the triangles. So here are the conditions for triangles congruence. Okay, we have here are the condition of a triangle congruence. So first is the SSS congruence postulate. The SSS or side congruence postulate. If the three sides of the one triangles are congruent to the corresponding side of another triangle, then the two triangles are congruent. In the given figure shows that we have segment AB is congruent to segment EF. And segment AC is congruent to segment FG. And we have the segment BC is congruent to segment EG. We have to prove that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle FEG. So in the given figure shows, so we have to prove, we have the statement and reason. So segment ABC is congruent to EF, given. Segment AC is congruent to FG, given. And segment BC is congruent to FG. Therefore, we have proof by the use of SSS postulate in the given figures. Next we have is the SAS congruent postulate, or the SAS or side angle side congruent postulate. If two angles and each concluded angle of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding side and it excludes the angle of another triangle, then the two triangles are congruent. In the given two triangles, we have the segment AB is congruent to segment EF. Segment BC is congruent to segment FG, and the included angle B and angle F are also congruent. We have to prove that triangle BAC is congruent to FEG. So we have the segment AB is congruent to segment EF, given. Segment angle AB is congruent to angle F, given. And segment BC is congruent to segment FG, given. Then we have to prove that a triangle BAC is congruent to triangle FEG by the use of the SAS congruent postulates. Another is the ASS congruent postulate, or the angle side angle congruent postulate. If the two angles and the included side of the one triangles are congruent to the corresponding two angles, and an included side of another triangles, then the two triangles are congruent. So in the given two triangles that we have angle A congruent to angle M, and angle B is congruent to angle N. Then we have included side, segment AB and segment MN are also congruent. We have to prove that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle MNF. So in the given statement, we have here that we prove the triangle ABC is congruent to triangle MNE.
Thank you. Enjoy watching while learning. This is your teacher, Miss Marimar F. Figala.